I personally look at it from the people that we are serving, the communities that we are serving, whether it's diaspora, whether it's vulnerable people, vulnerable consumers. From my perspective, that's actually what I study as well. So I'll be interested to hear from our wonderful speakers that we have along with us. As you know, every speaker has about 7 minutes, and we'll save the questions for the end. We also have a
I want to start by greeting everyone here. Good afternoon, bon après-midi, jambo, buonasera, whatever. So I really want to begin by by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and paying my respects to elders past and present. I also want to extend our respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people, universities compared from Australia and Africa. Of course, I'd like to begin by sincerely thanking our co-host, the Australia-Africa University Networks, for convening this important forum, and also wish to acknowledge the 2025 Forum Organizing Committee. Well done, the team. A few days ago, basically, for the social license context is not granted by law; it's granted by trust. The trust that we want to see between stakeholders such as universities and also communities. So, for communities organization like ours, this principle is more than a theory; it is lived in reality. Social license, from our community perspective, is about accountability. It's about demonstrating that partnerships are not extractive, but reciprocal. Universities, African Historical Center has been having an increased number of partnerships, including in many universities nationwide. So allow me to share an example that speaks directly to the value of universities and community organizations working together. Just 2 years ago, through Associate Professor David Mitman, the African Historical Center began its journey of engagement with Catholic University. What started as simple participation in events quickly grew into something much deeper. Soon, the African Historical Center was invited to collaborate on research initiatives. This gave us the opportunity to see firsthand not only what Catholic University does in the space of community engagement, but also how and why it does it. What became clear is that the Catholic University stands out as the first university in Australia to meaningfully and consistently engage with African communities, not only in Western Australia, not only nationally, but also through connections that extend beyond Australia's borders. So that is powerful.
Great. We have our next speaker, Professor Farida Fozdar. She's the Dean for Global Futures at Curtin University, and she will be telling us more about how we can engage with communities, especially diasporas.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Noel. I'm going to pick up on some of the things that you talked about. So it's my pleasure to be here, and like the other speakers, I also would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, land that was never ceded, and that we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. This is a small way in which we in Australia recognise that we benefit from the dispossession of the Indigenous people here. But our engagement with that issue should not stop just at acknowledgements. We also need to take action as well. And my colleague, who's the Dean Indigenous Futures, she actually talks about a process of reconciliation rather than reconciliation. And I think that that's quite a helpful way to think about this process of coming together. So, social license. I'm not going to talk much about social license. What I'm going to do is to talk about, I guess, the evolution of my research to the point where we are now, to make the argument that we at universities have always been engaged in the sorts of important activities which should be recognised as supporting the idea that we have a social licence to do what we do, and that includes the sort of engagement and trust that Noel was talking about. So I'm going to engage with the theme through this topic of research. So in the early 2000s, one of the first jobs that I got was to be the research officer on a project that was looking at understandings of depression and anxiety among a range of migrant communities, including several communities from the Horn of Africa area. And one of the things that struck me about that research is that concepts of depression are very, very different across cultures, which we sort of knew, but it was very interesting to hear from the perspective of some of the African communities how different those concepts were. But what I found was interesting was that these were people who had come predominantly from on the humanitarian entry pathway, visa pathway into Australia. So there were people of refugee or refugee-like experiences. But rather than talking about those experiences as having generated a sense of depression or post-traumatic stress disorder or any of these other Western kind of concepts, they just simply didn't talk about those experiences of persecution that they had experienced. Instead, they talked about their experiences of settlement. They talked, again, mostly humanitarian entrants. And in that research, we found that people really appreciated the settlement services that they had. And if you ask people, do you feel you belong in Australia? They say, yes, I feel I belong because I have access to a range of services, because I'm allowed to have permanent residence or I'm allowed to have citizenship. I can get some social welfare and so on. But they also would say, but I don't belong in another way. I feel as though I don't have a sense of ethnic belonging. They didn't use those terms, but they felt that the Australian people, the wider population, didn't feel as though they were part of the community. But they aspired to that. They felt that at some point in the future, they might experience that sense of belonging. So they had this sort of dual sense of belonging where they felt they belonged in one way and didn't belong in other ways. We also did another project that was looking at employment issues for, again, that we know are out there, to change the narrative, to tell a more positive story. And we've done a range of, we've done some analysis of websites of community organisations, we've done a number of interviews with people, community leaders and also community members, some of the political figures as well, and we've done a large survey. And the large survey, if I can ask Ruvi to pull up, it's the 5th slide, I think. So these are slides from a presentation that I'm about to give on Thursday. Yes, that one. Yeah, just stop it there. So I can't give you, that's going to be a half-hour presentation, and so, but I just want to share this one with you. So this research was a large survey of over 800 people who have originated in Africa, or one of their parents has originated in Africa. And I have to wind up quickly. But I just thought this top figure on the right, if you can see it, is very, very interesting. We asked people a range of questions, including their reasons for migration. And you see that the main reason for migration to Australia, the top one there is to escape war, conflict and political insecurity. And so when I hear that, I think, that's the black Africans, they're coming to escape conflict and political insecurity. But can you see the percentages there? 53% are white, those are the white Africans saying that that's their reason for coming here. There's far fewer of the black Africans saying that. Kind of interesting. Now, this is interesting because we don't have any data on differences between the experiences of black and white Africans. So you will hear a lot more from us about this. I'm giving a webinar the week after next.
Dinesh Sarup. He's the PDC for Planning and Resources at the University of Mauritius, and he'll be talking to us a little bit about how universities can support different types of communities. So welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very good afternoon. It is always difficult to speak the last one because the two previous speakers have set the bar very high. However, I'll try to tell you a story about the University of Mauritius, how we are engaged in the social license. I will share basically the perspective of Mauritius, University of Mauritius, and probably the island states, small island states from the Indian Ocean. I will join those who has spoken before me in the morning and well as well about what social license is all about. Basically, it is about trust, right? And I'll go a bit beyond. It is also about acceptance from the communities beyond the formal mandate. For universities, this goes beyond the teaching and research. That is basically our normal agenda. It is about being relevant, about being inclusive, and about being responsive to the needs of the society.
It was great listening to the talks by Noel, Farida, and Dinesh. Thank you so much. Great insight. So, Noel's point in starting off was about more of trust and the fact that universities and the communities need each other. Truth be told, and I'm being respectful to you academics, we benefit a lot from the community. When we go there, collect the data, analyze, publish, and we get promoted. And unfortunately, we don't get the dividends back to the community, especially if there are action points that need to improve, because sometimes we give excuses, no funding. But we found the funding to do the research, not the solutions. Quite important point you made, Noel, as well, as when universities and the communities work together, it fosters a lot of, I would say, employment and other benefits to both sides, that's mutually. Then we went up to Farida. So I have a confession to make. Are you ready for it? All right, so 2009, I came to Australia from the Netherlands, where I studied as an anthropologist. So when I came here as part of the community engagement and all that, somebody pulled me and said, look, there's an academic here in this city who is writing all kinds of things about African community. Can you do something about it? So this person sent me all the papers, she's not aware, sent me all the papers that Farida has written. But I'm not going to go into the story, but I heard something interesting that actually provided context to why the papers at that time had that tone, which was the fact that currently the narrative has changed. It's more positive, it's focusing on entrepreneurship, it is ensuring that positive narratives of African young people are being shared. And I'm also really thankful for the fact that you told a very beautiful story of white Africans and black Africans, because oftentimes the conceptualization of Africanness is seen in blackness. And so by default, everyone tends to see Africanness as blackness, but you've opened our eyes into some kind of experiences about what other Africans who may not look like me also experience, because there are Zimbabwean Africans, Angolan Africans, South African who look white and are basically African. So engaging communities will not just focus on black people, but also African people that look different, but maybe experiencing discrimination or some kind of disadvantage. But I would just say tread cautiously because of Trump. Because he might tell a story that there's genocide happening over there, which may not necessarily be. Okay, cool. And Dinesh, thank you so much also for sharing the fact that beyond trust, it's about acceptance, social license, and also we place the university also in the center of community outreach and all that. On this note, I will end that the discussion has been really useful. For me, at ECU, community engagement is not something you choose, it's compulsory because of accreditation. So to get accreditation for our course, we need to be on the ground. And so we have centers in Yancho, we have centers in Wanneroo, and we have centers in Northern Perth where I work mostly with African kids, because ECU funded me to start a center to help African kids that are struggling with English, maths, and science for free. So twice a week, they come there and we teach them for free. So it's positive in the sense that accreditation bodies are doing very well in telling us that, look, show us what you're doing on the ground, and then we can give you the accreditation to run your courses. Right, so I want to thank all the speakers for